497 silver punch mark. So we're helping to supply local schools with
was held by the Association of Chinese Traditional Religions. 3,478.
found 497 silver punch mark. So we're helping to supply local schools with
auspicious blessings.
从树助人，这是人最重要的一个工作。
was held by the Association of Chinese Traditional Religions. 3,478.
各位学者、贵宾，大家吉祥。
Auspicious greetings, professors and distinguished guests.
接下来将进行论坛主题佛教海线丝绸之路新媒体艺术特展。
The theme for this panel is the Buddhist Maritime Silk Road New Media Art Exhibition.
在论坛开始之前，首先为大家说明议事规则。
Here are a few reminders before the panel session.
主持人引言时间为3分钟。
Moderator will give an opening remarks in under 3 minutes.
发表者发表时间为20分钟。
Each panelist has 20 minutes to present.
发表至18分钟时会举牌提醒。
When 2 minutes are left, a sign will be raised as a reminder.
发表至20分钟时再次举牌提醒结束。
When time is up, a sign will be raised again as a reminder.
现在介绍本场次论坛主持人，人间佛教研究院副院长妙光法师。
Let us welcome the moderator of this panel, Venerable Miao Guang, Deputy Chancellor of Fogwangshan Institute of Humanistic Buddhism.
以下介绍负责本次展览的4位策展人。
Today we are honored to invite the 4 curators for the exhibition as our panelists.
佛陀纪念馆馆长暨总策展人如常法师。
Venerable Ru Chang, Main Curator and the Director of Fogwangshan Buddha Museum.
美国加州大学柏克莱分校终身荣誉教授、电子文化地图协会主席暨学术策展人兰卡斯特教授。
Dr. Louis Lancaster, Academic Curator and the Emeritus Professor of University of California, Berkeley.
香港浸会大学视觉艺术院讲座教授暨技术策展人邵志飞教授。
Professor Jeffrey Shaw, Artistic Curator, Chair Professor of the Academy of Visual Arts at Hong Kong Baptist University.
瑞士洛桑联邦理工学院教授暨技术策展人莎拉·肯德丁教授。
Professor Dr. Sarah Kenderdine, Artistic Curator, Professor of EPFL, Switzerland.
现在有请人间佛教研究院副院长妙光法师主持，掌声欢迎。
We now pass the mic to the moderator, Venerable Miao Guang.
好，谢谢2位司仪。好，我们今天论坛的4位语坛人，好，现场所有的教授学者以及所有的贵宾还有法师们，大家早上好，早上吉祥。好，欢迎来到这一次星云大师纪念学术论坛的第2天。好，那我们非常荣幸呢，在今天的第3、第4场论坛都能够得到对于海线佛教丝绸之路更多的认识跟了解。好，那我们有没有注意到今天这一场的那个现场？灯光美，气氛佳。好，所以各位千万不要睡着，不然你会错过很精彩的 PPT。好，也就是我们调整到这个光线呢，实际上是4位策展人准备的这个内容啊，非常非常的丰富。那我想我是在等待了5年之后，好，终于能够跟4位策展人坐在一起，好，超过了50次的会议，好，等了这么久，所以我自己今天也相当的激动，可以看到，我想是当今世界在佛教界的这一个美术跟这个博物馆界啊，最有创意、最有美学，然后想象力最不受限的4个头脑。好，那所以我们可以很期待今天对于这个海线佛教丝绸之路的内容，可以一一呢从4位的策展人身上得到一些非常精彩的故事。好 ，So first of all, I would like to welcome everyone to the second day of the academic conference. We are all very excited to hear more about the Buddhist Maritime Silk Road New Media Art Exhibition. Well, for myself, it is a tremendous honor to be sitting here with some of the world's most creative, aesthetic, and unbound minds who have brought us into a whole new dimension of life. We finally have all 4 curators sitting here in person after 5 years of waiting, so I'm also very, very excited. And we all understand that the Buddhist Maritime Silk Road New Media Exhibition has offered a lot of visitors a glance into an imaginable world of the Prajnaparamita, wisdom, compassion, and creativity, where we become united with the greatest thinkers, storytellers, architects, and sculptors in Buddhist history. Yesterday, during the keynote, we got to hear the complete story in a nutshell, and told by Dr. Lancaster, the academic curator. But I dare speak on behalf of everyone today that it was not enough. It wasn't enough, Professor. So we all want to hear more. We all want to tap into the behind-the-scenes journeys of this wonderful exhibit. So Forum 3 today is dedicated to this moment. And allow me to begin with our main curator, who is also the director of the 佛光山 Buddha Museum, Venerable 如常。那我今天的第一个问题呢，想要请教这一次的主策展人，也就是佛陀纪念馆馆长如常法师。那我这边一并把想要问的3个问题呢问完，那我们再请馆长在20分钟内帮我们回答。那我们想要请问如常法师在佛陀纪念馆庆祝10周年，推出了好几个重量级的大展之中，佛教海线丝绸之路是其中之一。那我们有注意到它的副标题叫做新媒体艺术特展。那所以呢，我们要请教如常法师，请问到底什么是新媒体艺术？那这一个新媒体艺术特展的内容精华，要请馆长跟我们说说看。好，这个是问题的第一个部分。那后面2个部分呢，也请馆长一起告诉我们，在佛教海线丝绸之路当中，请问佛陀纪念馆又做了什么样的社会推广活动？我想这个社会教育推广活动是很重要的。那最后一个问题呢，这个展览对于佛教界、学术界、博物馆界跟我们自身的影响又是什么？ So just in a nutshell, my question for Venerable Ru Chang is that since its opening in 2021, the Maritime Buddhist Silk Road has been a main exhibition, which has hit the 2 million visitor mark already. So indeed one of the most popular. So my question for her is in 4 parts. First of all, what does new media art mean? And second of all, what does this exhibition entail? And thirdly, what kind of education promotions have we done at the Buddha Museum? And then finally, what is the influence of this exhibition on the Buddhist academic and museum circle? So I'm going to hand the mic over to Venerable Ru Chang now.
谢谢我们主持人妙光法师，我们兰卡斯特教授以及肯德丁教授，还有邵教授及现场所有的来宾，大家早上吉祥。谢谢妙光法师刚才的提问哈。很多人问我海线丝绸之路新媒体艺术特展，那这个些题目呢，主持人刚才把它浓缩成3个。那讲到这个展览的缘起，昨天我们听到兰卡斯特教授的主题演说，我想大家都非常的感动。我最感动的是，当他的儿子还有他的孙子到了展场以后，才知道他们有一个这么伟大的爸爸，然后贡献了国家社会这么多的学术研究的一个成果。那话说呢，在2017年的时候，妙光法师告诉我说，兰卡斯特教授要找我。那我心里面呢就有一点欢喜，因为兰卡斯特教授呢是我们在佛教界那非常著名的一个学者。他来找我呢，拿出了也就是一本的厚厚的，当时候还没有翻译的那展览的文本。那我看到这个展览文本的时候呢，那我跟妙光法师说，要请研究院呢把它整个翻译成中文。翻译成中文呢，看到这样子的一个大纲，有5个章节，从前言到第2章佛教的起源跟传播，到第3章佛教的大圆环跟弘法和发展，第4章呢海上传播的佛教演变，那包含结语的这个部分。当我看到这个这样子的一个内容的部分呢，我就发现很多的底本来自于法显大师的《佛国记》，那这是一个非常重要的一个文献的一个记载。那足迹遍及中亚、南亚跟东南亚。那法显大师呢，大概是走最长的，在所有的取经里面，他无人出其右哈，他是用脚走的，走了15年哦。那包含坐船。那这个部分呢，我就发现呢，透过这样子的一个佛国记呢，以及兰卡斯特教授的研究呢，那呈现这样的文本，我发现 这个展览非常非常的难，是所有展览类别里面属于文献的展览。历史类的展览很好做，审美类的展览很好做，然后名人类的展览很好做，最难的就是文献类的展览。那内容到底讲什么呢？就讲3件事，一个是海洋，一个就丝绸，第3个就是诗人取经，那取成佛经。在古籍里面记载呢，在东周时期呢，也就是西元770年，那到前225年的齐国就有很多黄海航海的船只。在西汉呢的时期呢，海上的贸易是变成国家的一个非常重要的活动。广州呢是最主要的港口。中国的船只呢，常常经由这边呢开往越南、马来西亚、苏门答腊、印度以及中东进行。所以在唐朝的时候，为什么会大唐盛世呢？会开启呢“一带一路”乃至到达巅峰的海线丝路跟陆路丝路？那是因为造船术的一个大发展。那时候就2条路线，一条呢往东呢就东南半岛的那登州呢起岸，跨到黄海，到了当时候的朝鲜，现在的韩国，那以及呢到日本。另外一条呢就从广州出发，从南海呢到马来群岛跟苏门答腊。那这样的文字呢，透过兰卡斯特教授的学术研究呢，形成海线佛教地图，也是这一次最主要展览的一个精华。所以在文化交流的方面呢，流传下来的史籍记载了印度、波斯、中亚以及佛教的僧侣不畏艰难穿过沙漠，将佛教呢那传来，从印度传来，或再从中国传过去。那这一些呢，形成双向交流的一个取经的一个路线。那讲到兰卡斯的展览文本呢，我看了以后觉得非常的难度非常的大。为什么？因为如何将生硬的学术的文本变成好看的故事、好听的故事，然后让观众呢能够接受这样的展览叙事。所以展览叙事是博物馆界呢在这几年来非常重要的切入的一个视角，在我们做展览展示的时候，所以展览叙事呢有双重性哦，一个是时间性，一个是空间性。如何在时间性跟空间性呢，将展览的叙事的故事呢，能够将文本如实的呈现，是一个很大的考验。我看完之后呢，还是非常的焦虑，所以妙光法师呢，我就跟他讲说，这个展览难度太大了，恐怕做不成功哈。他说，那我们再飞一次到美国去找兰卡斯教授，再讨论一次文本。我们就前往去了美国，2018年呢，然后花了1整天的时间跟兰卡斯教授呢，那讨论所有的文本，然后再更加的了解他学术上所要呈现的东西。事实上，我们面临非常多的一个挑战，因为展览，我跟兰卡斯教授说呢，这样的展览说实在的困难跟挑战太大了。如果要做的精彩呢，一定要花费巨资哦。那时候我心里面就想，如果没有80万美金。50万美金呢是做不到的。但跟他谈完之后呢，我发现可能要100万美金，所以这个是我最大的一个困难。那所以同时在那个时候呢，我也同时呢飞到了德州，那去找我们现在的那个佛光山总功德主代表。我问了赵元修跟辜怀珍居士说，希望你们能够支持我做这一个展览，因为是佛教海线，而且是学术上的首次的一个发表。赵居士呢跟怀珍跟我讲说，如常你就放心去做吧，只要是弘法的事情，我们一定支持佛光山到底。很感谢这样的一个很大的一个助缘哈，那但是我们也面临的第2个困难跟挑战，也就是如何透过新媒体，那里面用的东西非常的多，包含互动的联网、虚拟的实践、3D 的建模以及光度的技术，将数位化、个性化、知数化，并把所有的资料放在云端化。那这个是我们这一次呢，整个全部有这样的专业的团队来呈现。所以，当我跟兰卡斯教授讲说呢，这个新媒体要找一个人，他说我介绍你全世界那顶尖的学者，那就邵志飞教授。他来的时候呢，看着我们，然后我在想说，他心里想说，我们懂不懂展览哈？那 但是呢，我们一谈之后呢，很快速的，我们每次大概花了3天的时间，从早到晚，那超过呢12个小时哈。所以从展览的文本到经费的来源，到展览的施作，到传播与教育推广，以及之后的维护跟更新，是所有展览里面总策展人必须要做的事情。所以兰卡斯教授呢，帮我们组织了这样的一个团队，那我们呢才能够呈现这样的事。常常有人问我说：“你这个总策展人是在做什么？”我说：“第一个最难的经费的找寻。”第二个部分呢，馆内展品、研究品的选件；第三个，从展览的文本到展览的空间，到底要做多大，它的动线是怎么样，还有佛馆的团队要怎么样加进来，变成一个大的团队，还有展览之后跟观众效益的一个评估。那学术策展人是所有的展览非常重要的一个精华，有好的脚本，才有好的故事。那技术策展人呢，也就是因应在现代的新媒体的运用开发，透过文本能够让它转化，那变成大家看得懂的东西。那这样的展览呢，还必须有教育推广，所以讲座、体验、传播就是馆内非常重要的事情。到了2019年呢，师父在养病的期间呢，特地早餐的时候来看了兰卡斯特教授，以及多次的问候这一次的一个展览。那进行到一半呢，突然间邵志飞教授告诉我说，我跟他讲说，所有的设计、所有的施工、所有的团队都在台湾，为了以后维护的问题。那他跟我讲说不要，他还要再增加瑞士人跟香港人，所以又来了2个瑞士人跟香港人。我们的沟通呢，在更加的复杂，因为从美国人、澳洲人、瑞士人、香港人，再加上呢，包含常常的妙光法师呢，常常要了翻译，我太佩服他了，因为呢，他必须要有佛学的基底，要有高科技的专业语言，又必须要有那个展览的那个专有名词。所以他全部都要转化，那甚至要展场的施作。所以每次呢，那个开完会以后呢，他就跟我讲说，我下次不要跟你们开会了，因为实在是太痛苦了。那跨了5个学科，跨了5个场域，跨了5个专业，对他来讲，他说我只会佛学跟英文，但是呢太困难了。但是要跟大家报告，这个展览能够成功的，妙光法师起了很大的作用。为什么？因为我跟邵教授呢有很大的多次的争执，跟多次的讨论，跟多次的没办法磨合，他都没有翻译，还好。他没翻他的给我听，他也没翻我的给他听，所以呢，他也不晓得发生什么事，我也不晓得发生什么事，所以我们一直到现在都是很好的朋友。那兰卡斯教授呢，从坐的拐杖到坐的轮椅呢，事实上我们一直在讨论定位的问题、空间的问题、流畅度的问题、故事脚本的问题。那要多还是少？要1个展厅还是2个展厅？我也在这边非常感谢呢，我有闲副馆呢，事实上他在展场多达2个半月。如果没有有闲副馆帮我在现场呢，能够将整个案子执行，跟现场呢将这些团队，工程团队是很复杂的，从铁工到木工，从木工到多媒体，从多媒体到油漆，从油漆到地毯，所有的到灯光，所有的事情呢，有闲法师掌握得非常的精准哈，我非常感谢他哈。那肖教授呢，一度曾以我所选的那个发包施工的厂商能不能做出这样的球形。我跟厂商呢，我跟他讲说，我绝对是挑选能够执行的厂商。他很怀疑我哈，所以他也没翻呢。对，那还好他也没翻哦。我就跟他讲说，请你相信这个球形绝对没有问题，平整度、光滑度以及呢整个投影的视觉度呢，绝对非常的好。那选件的部分呢，我们从19世纪到那个当代的文物呢，包含贝叶金是78、19。那我从佛光山的典藏品里面去把它挑选出来，因为这是展览里面非常重要的一个灵魂，也就是僧人取经在佛教海线丝绸之路所需要扮演的重要的灵魂的角色，就是经典。那所以展览的开幕呢，我们整个佛馆的团队。包含所有的副馆哈，我们有4个副馆哈，我这边也跟大家介绍一下我们的议论副馆长，对，那还有永隆副馆长，对，还有永军副馆长以及有贤副馆长，对。 我们是一个非常包容又开放的团队，非常创意呢，又可以回到原点的团队哈。那我们都准备好了，准备开幕了哈。那我们也把开幕箱做好了，流程做好了。那幻想当天的开幕，那也做了一个场景，当天是成千上万的人来参加开幕式。结果呢，我们遇到了疫情。当天呢，5月16号，那个6月那个整个呢开幕的前2天呢，就整个疫情呢3级警戒，佛馆也从此关上了。那他们看看我，问我会不会很悲伤哈？我说呢，有佛法就有办法。那这个时候怎么办？那展览的延期，5月16号佛光山开山纪念日要开展，结果变成关门哈。那我就说没关系，我们来做什么？我们来把教育推广好好的做。我们在2个半月里面呢，开始成立了教育推广的共识会议。我们邀请了中山大学呢外文系的黄欣雅教授，以及我们高雄大学资讯系的林世子副教授也在现场。我们组织了一个强大的，把佛馆呢盘点所有的校长老师全部呢，现场的大家站起来，在座现场我们的种子老师都在现场，都是学校的老师跟教授，以及退休的老师跟教授。我们组织了一个庞大的教育推广的读脚本，然后我也请信子老师呢来加以培训。那从法师的培训到读书会呢，到种子教师的培训，到讲座，到读书会，我们一气呢呵成。那关馆期间呢，佛光山也就是我们的前任馆长慈宏法师说，那就让全山的法师都来看。那同时呢，佛光山的法师来看以后，我说那佛馆的法师全部来接待，每一个人都要会讲。所以你现在点所有的法师，几乎他们都会讲佛教海线。那包含从馆员的培训，以及到了义工的一个培训。那危机就是转机呢，所以深度的培训、教育的推广，那我们不断的去将研究的成果转化变成国小、国中、高中的一个知识传播以及手作的课程。那我们也透过这样子，再变成了3个系列，一个是朝圣系列，一个是祖师系列。我们同时在线上呢，跟线下呢，同时进行佛教海线丝绸之路的传播。传播是所有展览里面最重要的一个部分，所以我们透过这样的部分呢，那个6体感官，再加上6体感官新的旅程，以及双阁楼茶禅以外，我们包起了整个这样的展览，从室内到户外，从云端到实体。那我们也做了跟着高僧呢去取经哈。那有请了跟着请一空法师呢讲的玄奘大师去取经，请觉居法师那讲的意境大师呢那去取经。那慧伦副住持呢讲法显大师，包含妙凡院长呢那从幸运大师的海天游中呢那谈大师呢弘法的一个过程。那我们同时呢，也将这样的部分结合518的国际博物馆日。我想国际博物馆日是佛馆最重要的一个活动哈，也在我们当时候的理事长，我们的萧院长呢的主持之下，我们有123那勇闯佛教海线跟佛教海线的新官网以及开放博物馆，我们同时呢全部放到了网络上。那也同时呢，在跟中研院合作开放的博物馆，那以及呢勇闯海线丝绸之路的所有的线上的观展。那从此我们也往下扎根，我们每一年的11月6号，大概10月左右呢，都有国际书展，有大概2万的学子来，我们也将它呢，透过我们的义工培训以及教育推广处呢，知名法师呢，化为其中的一站，就是必看的佛教海线丝绸之路。甚至我们在神明年仪会，这个是公庙来看哈，看的这尊这个很晕船哈。那也是其中一站，他们开始有了新的体验，那感受呢不一样的博物馆的新体验。那同时我们在过年的期间、新春期间呢，也变成我们主要的一个宣传的一个教育推广的一个佛教海线丝绸之路。更是呢，我们在展出10大镇馆之宝，为了让大家呢能够看到16世纪、17世纪、18世纪的贝叶经呢，我们也将它作为票选的那其中之一。我们更将馆内呢深度的旅游以及夜宿博物馆新的旅程呢结合在一起，所有每一团的人都要来看佛教海线。所以我们同时呢在滴水坊也透过我们的佛教海线的食物，让大家来享受佛教的美食哈。 那这些呢，都是第一水坊所做出来的佛教海鲜的美食。那用了新的平台，那将这一些呢全部放到网络上，所以线上的展览，那变成线上开放的博物馆，那包含 Podcast 以及所有的文宣媒体，那 YouTube 的一个媒体。那我在这个疫情期间呢，给我很大的启发跟很大的帮忙。我就觉得，怎么在户外的人比在馆内的人多，所以我就发现要非常重视户外。所以那时候呢，我又跑了一趟台北，那找了顾小姐，我说我能不能跟保种中心合作，将所有保种中心有的佛教植物呢，全部呢依照佛国记、大唐西域记里面呢，全部让它种植回来。那佛馆这个园区，那这个部分呢，是我在大师开馆的时候，大师说要回到佛陀时代的佛陀纪念馆，那我们就想把这样的植物种进来。我们很幸运的找了56种，将近200多种植物呢进来。所以事实上呢，这5年来呢，因为佛教海线呢，也提升了我们人才的培养，也提升了教育的推广，更大大的提升了我们对外的一个交流，以及在学术上博物馆界，那以及教育界跟文化界，有好几个大学的校长都指定资讯系的老师跟学生呢，一定要来看这些新媒体。看完之后呢，他们很震惊。那光是看投影机这么少，但是可以做出这么多的内容。那他们发现背后的技术呢，跟背后的韩职的一个新媒体的一个城市呢，有庞大的一个最尖端的一个团队哈。所以在兰开始的教授呢，事实上他在做这些脚本的时候，在昨天呢，他讲的主题演说。那我非常的感动哈，尤其是他讲到最后一句，在他有生之年还可以看到他的学术成果，那被我们所呈现，那以及召开学术研讨会。但是呢，他在前一天呢，又跟我们开了4个小时。他问我说，能不能做到韩国跟日本？他一直希望呢往上做啊。那佛教海线丝绸之路非常重要的一个起点，广州。那到浙江，浙江很多的僧人呢，是从浙江呢到了那个印度去，到日本去的，包含黄破寺，那包含隐元禅师，这些都是从浙江，那包含山东，那影响了韩国跟日本的佛教。也就是说，韩国跟日本的佛教不是陆路，而且由海路呢传播。那我们经过了非常漫长的将近5个小时的一个讨论呢。那包含邵志飞教授跟莎拉教授，甚至我们检讨，那观众行为到底在佛教海线丝绸之路里面呢，会引发他们最大的困扰以及看不懂的地方在哪里？我说最大的困扰就是希望佛馆买晕船药，卖晕船药。那我说这个360度的全景那个视觉的环绕呢，对所有的人的是一个体力跟脑力上的一个考验哈。那这个部分呢，我们不断的想办法克服。第2个困难呢，也就是呢，疫情之后，我们原本的那个半球体的一个仪式跟石窟呢是触控式的，那我们现在要研发非触控式的，也就是说所有的展场，我们希望那透过疫情呢给我们的考验，我们希望跳脱触控式的这个部分。那我们还想要做一个大数据，也就是观众行为的调查。如果看到了展览以后，它产生的一些透过10个到20个问题呢，能够形成大数据，作为我们第2个阶段展览改成设计呢的一个科学的一个依据的一个参考。所以我们就很高兴呢，就在成佛大道拍的这一张照片。那这张照片是我们接续呢第2个阶段，那即将呢要开展的。那第2个阶段呢，要用多少时间呢？我们第1个阶段呢，那兰卡斯特教授呢，花了30-40年的佛学研究的底本。那邵志飞教授跟莎拉教授去拍了8年的时间，我们佛馆用了4年的时间做出来，我们加起来呢，大概超过快要50几年哦，才有这个展览的呈现。那下个展览到底什么时候呢？请大家拭目以待。最后，我还是要回到家师星云大师哈，因为如果他没有很开放，如果他一直觉得呢科技非常的重要， 所以呢，大师说呢，现今的社会成长迅速，科技发展一日千里，与时俱进呢，成为顺应时代潮流的必然趋势。那师父非常重视数位的科技、新媒体的弘法，所以大师呢，为什么非常支持这个展览？他说呢，因为有这样子的一个科技，让所有的佛教呢，没有淹没在黄沙滚滚的大漠中，也没有被波涛汹涌的巨浪所吞噬，让人类的文明发展呢，珍贵的历史得以保存。保存是博物馆的一个使命，传播也是博物馆重要的使命。因此呢，弘法科技呢，我们不是追求流行，我们希望透过这样的保存历史呢，透过研究与传播，让文化得以保存。我想是这一次展览呢最重要的意义跟价值，也是佛馆在公众教育上的使命。那以上跟大家分享，再次谢谢我们所有的策展团队及妙光法师。
好的，非常谢谢如常馆长跟我们分享这么精彩的策展旅程。我只是没有想到我会成为爆料的其中之一。那我想在20分钟内要听完这么丰富的这个内容，其实不容易。那我可以建议大家再回去 YouTube 呢，然后调到0.75的速度，重新多听几次，我们会吸收到更多很这个丰富的内容。那其实我要跟如常法师说，我真的有把你的想法翻译给教授听。只是当你说这个方法行不通，那我的翻译只是教授，我们再来想想其他的办法好吗？好，所以我是有翻译的哈。那我也要跟如常法师说哈，第二个阶段我其实非常期待哈，所以我跟您说，我会陪你一直走到最后。那其实如常法师有提到几次，这个展览是很困难。他说，在他的这个美术馆生涯当中，这个策展最困难的一个，所以我就跟 Lancaster 教授传达了这个想法。那教授只用英文回答了我2个字 ：Of course。The most difficult exhibition, and Dr. Lancaster said, "Of course." 但是他又说了一句话，他说：“我相信佛光山，因为佛光山有星云大师。”所以我们能够看到如常法师在带着团队把这么好的这个展览呢给做出来的同时，还是要非常非常感谢4位策展人呢，克服了千辛万苦，一起把这件事情成就。那接下来我先提醒大家，在桌面上呢都有一本中文或是英文的 Lancaster 教授的《海线佛教丝绸之路》的著作。那这个是佛陀纪念馆还有人间佛教研究院呢跟教授要送给大家的礼物，欢迎大家把书本带回去。好，那接下来因为时间的关系呢，对于3位的英文策展人，我就只讲英文，翻译就交给翻译机。So now next we're going to move to Dr. Jeffrey Shaw, our artistic curator, who's also the chair and professor of the Academy of Visual Arts at Hong Kong Baptist Church. Professor Jeffrey Shaw is a visual artist known for being a leading figure in new media art. He has pioneered the creative use of digital media technologies in the fields of interactive art, VR, AR, and MR, mixed reality, with the vision of connecting the real world with the artistic dimension. Yet everything he did came out of his art practice. He has worked as an independent artist for over 40 years. Professor Shaw, your works are just incredible. And we are fortunate to experience your dedication and expertise in the Buddhist Maritime Road narrative. So now, can you share with us your vision on the convergence of media art practice with cultural heritage? 那接下来我们就邀请邵志飞教授来跟我们谈谈他怎么做到新媒体艺术跟文化遗产的融合。Professor Shaw.
Thank you, Venerable Miao Guang. Together with Professor Sarah Kenderdine, we are so very happy to be here today in the context of this exceptional conference and our new media art exhibition on maritime Buddhism, which we have created together with Venerable Chang and Professor Lu Lancaster. My presentation will focus on this convergence of media art practice with cultural heritage, while Sarah will focus on some of our cultural heritage projects, and in particular, the Maritime Buddhist Silk Road fieldwork and exhibition. Art is providing both an aesthetic and technological framework whereby cultural heritage narratives can be given dynamic new expressions. There are 6 topics that I feel are most significant in this respect: interaction, interactive narrative, immersion, point of view, augmented reality, and embodiment. Interaction is a core feature of new media and has become ubiquitous in our digital world. In the late 60s, I was already exploring ways to introduce audience participation into my art practice. And this was also the case when I began to work with video in the 80s. For example, in a work titled Revolution, the viewer has to push this handle to rotate a monitor through a database of 200 images of world revolutions to celebrate the bicentenary of the French Revolution. In the late 80s, the advent of real-time computer graphics opened a whole new range of possible interactivity between the viewer and spaces of representation. In The Legible City, the viewer rides a bicycle through an urban landscape where the buildings are all made up of text. The handlebars allow you to choose your direction and pedaling the speed. Predating Google Maps, the viewer travels along the ground plans of actual cities, Manhattan, Amsterdam, and Karlsruhe. The buildings become letters that together constitute words and narrative. Using the bicycle modality of the Legible City, we recently designed this installation at the Heritage Museum in Hong Kong for an exhibition that lets you explore the gardens of Versailles. The narrative potential of interactivity is one of its most important content-carrying and aesthetic aspects. In this installation, we recorded the famous Singaporean poet Edwin Thumboo reciting 28 different poems and then put them in a 360-degree 3D projection environment. Using a microphone to control a virtual microphone, the viewer could choose which poem to listen to, and in moving between them, create a new and unique poetic combination.
Drink from the nectaries. For instance, most footpaths, matter of fact, enjoy 2 oversized cars. Aspen Ski Lodge. You give time enough, O Father of Light.
In this 360-degree installation, over 30,000 video clips can be interactively explored in a 3D space. Each video clip has metadata, so when you click on any one of them, it will search for others that are similar and cluster them in front of you. By dragging and dropping these video clips, you can assemble your own movie, making it into a kind of narrative Lego kit.
There was somebody on the other side. Always wondered if there was somebody on the other side of the universe.
With interactivity comes engagement, which in turn allows one to feel immersed in the world of digital representation. This can be amplified by means of expansive and engrossing visualization designs. Going back to my early art practices, I explored the transformation of sculpture from an object you look at to an object you get inside of, to create extraordinary immersive experiences like walking on water. In this all-surrounding 3D artwork, the interface is a wooden puppet with sensors in all its joints. By manipulating the puppet, the viewer modulates the real-time imagery as well as the real-time soundscape. The mannequin also lets you travel from one virtual world to another. The Buddhist Maritime Silk Road exhibition at Fo Guang Shan Buddha Museum offers a highly immersive use of 360-degree panoramic video projection, and Sarah will tell you more about this in her following talk. A recent exhibition of ours examines the artistic heritage of the ancient nomadic cultures of northern China. This installation evokes the mythological reindeer associated with the deer stones that one finds in the Mongolian landscape. They are presented as real-time animations that have a ghostly presence as they pass across these stones that now occupy the exhibition space. Last year, we were commissioned by the Hong Kong Palace Museum to make artworks that reformulate and reinvigorate the legacy of Chinese artifacts by means of new media. This particular installation is the dreamscape of the Qing dynasty emperor that the audience can share by lying down on a circular couch underneath a circular projection screen. Conjoined with its iconography, calligraphy by Master Wang Dongling expresses a poem that the lamenting emperor wrote about his deceased wife. The remaking of Confucian Rites project consists of reenactment of rites recorded in the Yi Li Book of Rites and Ceremonial, which was compiled by followers of Confucius in the 5th century BCE. The scholarship on which this reenactment of these rites is based is provided by the Center for Chinese Ritual Studies at Tsinghua University in Beijing, under the guidance of Professor Peng Lin. Our virtual reality renderings of these ceremonies are especially immersive and are intended to be published as an app for home viewing. The virtual reality model is a hybrid virtual world that incorporates all the real-life video recordings that we made. The viewer can freely navigate the temple environment and choose whichever video sequence of the archery ceremony that they want to enter. Interactivity, immersion, and engagement are all very much tied to the subjectivity of the viewer's point of view. Many of our installations explore ways to give physical expression to this. The interface in this work connects head tracking to a robot-controlled projector inside a dome, so that the projected image follows the viewer's gaze direction. In this way, you can explore a hemispherical immersive virtual world simply by moving your head. Here, a chair is the interface. Rotating it and leaning back and forth controls your movements in the virtual world, as well as the synchronous rotation of the motorized platform that you're sitting on. Here again, It's your individual point of view that is guiding the experience. Similarly, this rotating platform and its interface lets viewers personally explore the UNESCO World Heritage Site Hampi in India in 360 degrees and in 3D. In Hampi's virtual landscape, you can move around freely and choose to enter any one of these cylinders and then experience its heritage sites as surrounding one-to-one scale panoramas. And this, of course, is a paradigm that we adapted for the Atlas of Maritime Buddhism. In 2004, I created a new kind of interactive cinema in the form of a 360-degree surrounding space of multiple interconnected narratives that the viewer could freely navigate. While the movie itself is a linear exposition, the installation allows the viewer to become the camera person and editor, so that everyone can assemble their own movie experience. The linear navigator is another museological design that we invented that allows the visitor to control their point of view. And here it is in the Buddhist Maritime Silk Road exhibition at Fo Guang Shan. Augmented reality is especially relevant to the museological imaginary because it can create a dialogue and synthesis between the digital and physical, and thereby between the past and the present. This is one of my first augmented reality artworks. A CRT monitor and see-through mirror can be rotated and tilted to reveal virtual objects floating in different locations in the room. Note that one of the AR objects that was the word future with a question mark. And in this 2019 remake of this artwork, the question mark about our digital future is of course still a hot topic. This early augmented reality installation at the Science Museum at La Villette in Paris takes the form of a rotatable periscope-like device. It's an interactive video disc-based work that lets you choose and see various video images floating out in different areas of the museum. It is a virtual repository of lost ancient sciences. This early augmented reality artwork has a TV screen that you can hold in your hands long before the invention of the tablet. It lets you view a virtual golden calf standing on a real pedestal. My recently revised version of this artwork uses an iPad and optical tracking, and with 4 video cameras embedded in the pedestal, viewers can now see their real-time reflection in the skin of the golden calf. The work's mixed reality also derives from its real-time performativity, which locates and engages its virtuality in the real world. A museological extension of the golden calf is this installation we made for Melbourne Museum.
The worldwide animal viewers. Adapted from a concept by Professor Geoffrey Shaw, Museum Victoria worked with a local company, Megafun, to create a sophisticated but easy-to-use system for accessing additional information on each of the animals on display. The design of the worldwide animal viewer really fits in with the design of the rest of the gallery. It's easy to turn. I can shift it to see any animal that I'm interested in having a closer look at. And then all I do is touch the animal on the screen and it brings up a lovely little movie of the specimen.
We used our augmented reality technology to visualize the famous 100 Horses painting by Giuseppe Castiglione. It references a one-to-one scale copy of the drawing that is in the collection of the Metropolitan Museum in New York. We use our augmented reality to directly compare it with Castiglione's actual painting from the National Palace Museum in Taipei. For an exhibition on Leonardo da Vinci, we made an AR installation that lets you enter the cave painting, the cave that he painted in the Virgin of the Rocks. Again, using tracked iPads, you can go behind the foreground figures and explore a detailed model of that cave with all its rockery, plants, and vistas across a lake. This installation evokes the situation we faced in COVID times. It's a locker cabinet printed with an image of the COVID virus. Using a tablet, you can open its doors and find a lonely person inside each locker exercising to stay fit. Their exercises are all learned from watching video games. City in Time is an ongoing augmented reality project of ours in the Hong Kong urban environment. City in Time brings Hong Kong's extraordinary history back to life by transforming smartphones into magic augmented reality windows that contrast 360-degree panoramic images of old Hong Kong with today's surroundings. One of the challenges of digital representation is how to endow it with embodied expression, as well as provide for the full body engagement of the viewer. Some years ago, Sarah and I embarked on a project to motion capture Hong Kong Kung Fu masters. This motion capture data can be given aesthetic interpretations that evoke the inner dynamics of Kung Fu. In this recent pose-matching installation, the public can try to imitate Kung Fu masters using the latest tracking systems. And at our recent Way of the Sword exhibition in Hong Kong, you can train to become a master swordsman using optical tracking of your arm movements. You use your virtual sword to interactively follow the traces left by the master swordsman as he practices on a tree trunk. In a recent installation at the Hong Kong Palace Museum, we again reference a drawing of the famous 100 Horses painted by Giuseppe Castiglione, whereby the horses become interactive computational agents. 8 horses interact with visitors to the museum, who are being tracked by Kinect sensors, and while the style of the horses is based on Giuseppe Castiglione's drawing, they are being animated in real time by real-time motion capture data that we made of actual horses. With this work that concludes my presentation, we can see a full expression of both an embodied virtuality and the expressive embodied engagement of its viewers. In part 2 of our joint presentation today, Professor Sarah Kenderdine will elucidate some of our cultural heritage projects, and in particular, the Maritime Buddhist Silk Road fieldwork and exhibition. And let me add here how grateful we both are to Professor Lou Lancaster and the Fo Guang Shan Buddha Museum for enabling us to enact this wonderful project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Jeffrey Shaw. I have to say I'm really speechless upon what I have just seen. So my best effort to conclude or to reflect on what you have shared is from a Buddhist verse. Your works have truly penetrated past, present, and future. And they have crossed all 10 directions of space to make life limitless on all dimensions. So thank you so much. And our third panelist today is also our artistic director, the young Professor Dr. Sarah Kenderdine. Professor Kenderdine is a professor at EPFL, which is the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Lausanne, Switzerland. Professor Kenderdine is an exemplar on achieving a conjunction of new media art and cultural heritage. She's more than just an academia, a designer, an art director, or curator. Her accomplishments at the University of New South Wales, the Powerhouse Museum in Sydney, and a long list of the world's top museums have brought in front of the world's eyes the most stunning World Heritage sites, such as the Hampi in India, Olympia in Greece, the Angkor Wat, and the Mogao Grottos at Dunhuang via 360 degrees or 3D interactive installations. So without further ado, I now hand the mic over to Professor Kenderdine to share with us her vision and works on Buddhist heritage and new museology. Professor Kenderdine.
Thank you very much. So, new museology for cultural heritage is a framework that unites machine intelligence with data curation, ontology, the world of knowledge, with visualization, and communities of publics and practitioners with embodied interaction through immersive interfaces. For 25 years, we've been designing interactive frameworks for mass public engagement with cultural heritage. This was initially located at Museum Victoria, where we started to build these large-scale systems and experiences for mass public. We then started to collaborate with universities to help sustain this kind of research at the forefront of computer graphics. We co-established the Applied Laboratory for Interactive Visualization and Embodiment with City University at the Science Park in Hong Kong, and then created the Expanded Perception and Interaction Center at the University of New South Wales. And so you know what you're looking at here on the right-hand side, a small 7-meter diameter panorama. It's comprised of 56 projectors and a 29 computer cluster. It's 60 times the resolution of a head-mounted display. And most importantly, it's really at the edge of human visual acuity and was designed to solve visualization problems for complexity and big data in the humanities and the sciences. And now in Switzerland, the Lab for Experimental Museology, 1,500 square meter space with 12 large-scale systems, they offer us multi-sensory engagement, emphasizing human-to-human as well as human-to-machine interaction, giving us powerful ways to reformulate narrative in a digital context. M+ blends experimental curatorship and contemporary aesthetics with open science, digital humanism, and emerging technologies. And Professor Shaw's most recent laboratory, the Visualization Research Center, it's the first full 360-degree 3D LED system. So our research harnesses technologies that have unprecedented abilities to capture the world around us. Laser scanning, for example, collects billions of points to represent places such as these heads at Mount Rushmore scanned by the Scottish 10. We can create precious objects in 3D and peer inside to see what was previously unseen. We can capture art in a way that allows us to zoom into the tiniest brushstroke and reveal more than the naked eye can see. Advances in machine learning are also an emerging trend in our work. This is the photogrammetric model of Nefertari's tomb, and it was collected in only 8 hours of photogrammetry. Machine learning is used to remove the staircases, the halogen lighting, and the air conditioning units, and we streamed this model of 40 million pixels to 360 3D system over an 11 PC graphics cluster. We also recently acquired this robotic arm for super high fidelity, color accurate photogrammetry. And we're capturing intangible cultural heritage through various forms of motion capture with motion over time analytics. And we have a small history of our engagement with Buddhist heritage. And I'll just run through a few of these projects as a precursor to the Atlas of Maritime Buddhism. So in 2003, we created Sacred Angkor. It was an immersive work which showed for 5 years at the virtual room of Museum Victoria. It was using pioneering techniques of real-time stereographic panoramas of the UNESCO World Heritage Site. As you would all know, it's a very significant Buddhist heritage site as well. And visitors are circumambulating the virtual room, which is comprised of 8 screens, and looking at 9 of these stereoscopic images that are rotating inside at 1:1 scale. So it's recorded as the world's first 3D panoramic capture of a World Heritage Site, and it used just a single camera which took 180 fisheye images every 2 degrees and 360 degrees. And so it was a very challenging project because, of course, heritage sites are filled with tourists and moving objects, and in an image that takes three minutes to capture, it was extremely challenging. In the virtual room, various elements were recomposed, including real-time computer graphic animations. Here, water being central to the whole history of Angkor. Synthetic water refills some of the ritual pools that are no longer visible today. And spatialized soundscapes in Sacred Angkor were made up of a combination of in situ ambient recordings found throughout Angkor and musical compositions from temple life. Further strategies including augmenting the bas relief sculpture, the recoloring of sections using the pigment studies from the archaeological record, here the churning of the ocean of milk, but we also did extensive sections of the Bayon bas relief, which is one of the most preeminent Buddhist temples remaining at Angkor. So from ancient Cambodia to ancient China, here we are at the Dongwang Caves of the Gobi Desert. At the nexus of the Silk Road, this World Heritage Site has 492 caves carved into this escarpment, and inside are 45,000 square meters of painted frescoes and over 2,000 stucco statues crafted by Buddhist monks for over a period of 1,000 years. This sublime art treasury is like nothing else on the Chinese Buddhist world. Most of these caves are permanently closed to the public to ensure preservation, and the digital is the only mode of visitation in an era that we could say is characterized by heritage at risk. The caves are under threat from increasing tourism and microclimate change, the pigments and the paint are flaking off the walls. So there's an enormous preservation effort underway there, undertaken by the Dongwang Academy. Over 60 full-time photographers. It takes about 3 months to digitize a single cave. So the Pure Land projects were designed to activate the kinesthetic spatial responses of their viewers, and they give us important insights into how interfaces operate in the museological domain. The first of these works was staged in a 360 3D environment. It's a fully immersive projection, 10 meters diameter, 4 meters high, and it allows about 30 people a one-to-one scale experience of being inside the cave. So the first of these works starts with a significant cave browser looking at a piece of photogrammetry of the entire escarpment. We enter inside cave 220, an early Tang period cave. We're using a torchlight to simulate what it's like to be, if you do visit Dongguan today, you are often with a guide with about 60 other people, and that's your mode of viewing. We produced a magnifying glass to be able to examine the murals in great detail. Here, the Sutra of the Medicine Buddha is on the north wall of the cave. The Dongguan Academy undertook pigment studies and then recolored the sections of the murals to give an impression of what they would have originally looked like. There are 32 musicians on the north wall painting. All of their instruments were modeled in 3D. Beijing Academy dancers were commissioned to dance the Dongguan dance in a green screen studio, and their 3D videos were placed inside the virtual world. So at Dongguan today, there's only about 30 caves which are open to the public, and cave 220 is permanently closed. The AR version was originally conceived for Art Basel in Hong Kong, and here we see the wireframe from the laser scan printed on the walls of an exhibition booth at 1-to-1 scale. And here visitors are using this tablet like a window on the world. So they're walking inside the digital model at exactly 1-to-1 scale. And the interface has important things to teach us. The first is the way in which it harnesses socialization around a single screen. This social aspect is core to the museum experience. It's central to how we experience museums. And this is where interpretation takes place. It's also an interface for young children, for middle-aged ladies, for grandmother and grandchild. Grandmother abandons the grandchild, actually, takes off with the screen. So non-aged systems, very important. And the third most noteworthy quality here is the wife who takes an iPad from her handbag and she's filming her husband's experience as if they were really there. Virtual tourism. It was reformed as an interactive experience for the Full Dome at the World Economic Forum. It's a pyramidal cave, so it perfectly mapped to the hemisphere of the Full Dome to give a convincing sense of height. And myself and an eminent Chinese monk gave live tours to thousands of the WEF delegates in this interactive system. And the fourth version was looking at the democratization of VR for the head-mounted display. And here the user is walking on a blue carpet, which is exactly 1-to-1 scale with the real cave. And this gives us a kinesthetic cue to guide the user to stay inside the virtual world. And the computer is in a backpack. It was 2015, so it predates the current location-based entertainment live streaming. And here she is examining the cave. But what's important here is that one single data set was able to create 5 completely different installations, and it's this malleability of digital data that is its intrinsic quality. Philip Kennicott, critic for the Washington Post, said of the Smithsonian installation of Pure Land, "At last we have a virtual reality system that's worthy of inclusion in a museum devoted to the real stuff of art." And why that quote is important is it goes to the heart of the provocation of digital museum and expanding definitions of aura. what Bruno Latour calls the migration of aura from the real to the digital. We prefer to call a proliferation of aura, but it is without question that high-fidelity digital facsimiles no longer act as complements to the real object, but have profound and affecting presence in their own right. And when Professor Lancaster first mentioned to me the Atlas of Maritime Buddhism concept, I was completely enthralled. Not only was the project to be based on the compelling story of the spread of Buddhism from India through the seaports of Southeast Asia and South China Sea, my earliest profession just happened to be as a maritime archaeologist. So stepping back through the sands of time or the mists of time to the early 1990s, I spent my days digging up shipwrecks, and among them were a series of trading vessels located in Fujian province, just off the medieval town of Dinghai. So these Baijiao shipwrecks from the Song dynasty were filled with tea bowls, and this was the beginning of my fascination with the maritime trade of the region. And maritime Buddhism was an even more ancient trade. The theoretical framework for the initial grant that we wrote together with Professor Lancaster and Professor Shaw for the Australian Research Council lay in these ideas of deep mapping or cartocriticism. And we know that an emphasis on absolute space in Euclidean geometry frustrates the humanist's effort to understand how spaces change over time and how spatial relativities emerge and develop into narrative. We need to reconceive interpretations of the map as moving, embodied, social, technical, and emotive, and as an opportunity to represent alternative visual solutions to the specific problems of describing and depicting time and place. Conceiving of maps through a deep mapping schema posits that they're never fully formed, they're not static, but they emerge in navigational processes where everything is on the move. And as we know, this is perfectly synergetic to the narrative of maritime Buddhism. So this research and exhibition series at the time also had profound contemporary relevance to the socio-economic and political transformations of the world we're in today. While far-reaching enterprises such as the Belt and Road Initiative reactivates these ancient overland and maritime trading routes, the Atlas counterbalances prevailing narratives that neglected the importance of Pan-Asian maritime countries and Buddhist entrepreneurship in the expansion of trade from the 2nd century BCE to the 15th century CE. The spread of Buddhist doctrines from India to China triggered a profusion of cross-cultural exchanges that had profound impact on Asian and world history. It was a complex process that involved multiple societies and diverse groups, missionaries, itinerant traders, artisans, medical professionals. And while textiles made up a large percentage of trade between the Mediterranean and Asia, as Professor Lancaster has argued, it's black pepper found in the forests of South India, which was the major part of the maritime commerce. So we could rename the Maritime Silk Road as the spice route. Buddhism was spread by sailors who took with them their votive talisman, and intrepid monks from China and present-day Indonesia played key roles in the exchange from ancient India and China. Monks introduced new texts and doctrines to the Chinese clergy and carried and distributed Buddhist paraphernalia for the performance of rituals and ceremonies, and provided detailed accounts of their spiritual journeys to India. These included various monks such as Hsing, whose journey we see here on the map. 7th century, he traversed from China to India in a journey that took 25 years. And it's clear from the meticulous records, documentary records that we have from these monks, that India was hugely esteemed by China during this period. The atlas itself starts in the rock-cut caves of India. The aim of the digital component was to develop this pioneering narrative-driven deep mapping schema, an information visualization framework for exploring narrative patterns in the atlas. And what was most important was that this story was told into the public domain for the first time. And the fieldwork includes hundreds of sites across 7 countries so far, thousands of locations recorded in ultra high resolution 3D panoramic and spherical imaging. And can you sort that out? In addition, hundreds of priceless sculptures from national and site museums were modeled in 3D through photogrammetry to create an extraordinary resource that reveals iconographic transformation throughout the region. Here we're shooting primarily on an analog. Is it this one? I don't think so. I think it's these cables. Anyway. We're shooting primarily here on an analog stereographic camera, which rotates these 2 camera bodies in 360 degrees. Here you can see it in operation at the Shwagadam Pagoda in Myanmar, a site that wonderfully fuses historical and mythological accounts. The myriad of fieldwork techniques, a very small fieldwork team undertaking gigapixel imaging, panoramic video, and both digital and analog stereo. These are some of the gigapixel images that were created. This is at the site of Ajanta, giving us really unprecedented resolution to be able to explore these extraordinary sites. Another one at Mandalay. Here, the standing Buddha predicts the establishment of Mandalay, his right hand pointing towards the future city in the plains below. And here, with spherical video, monks and pilgrims at morning prayer in Bihar, where a Buddhist pilgrimage from surrounding countries is really a boom time. We undertook a lot of contemporary Buddhist practice documentation, including ambisonics, 3D architecture of sound, and just a few of the hundreds of locations, the stupa at Sanchi, the oldest Buddhist stone stupa in India, the far-flung 1st to 3rd century stupa at Sarnati containing elaborate sculptured panels depicting King Ashoka, who transformed India with the written word, and the great universities of Buddhist scholarship at Nalanda in Bihar, which flourished in the 5th century. And I'd like to acknowledge the great help of Dr. Dayalan here today, who facilitated our journeys throughout India. That's our very small fieldwork team. Here, mist-encapsulated Borobudur in Indonesia, the earthquake-racked Bagan with its plain of 2,000 plus stupas here adorned with with bamboo scaffolding to prevent these wonderful turbans from falling in the recent earthquakes. And the landscape of the irrigated landscapes of the Irrawaddy River and the site of the Pew kingdoms, which flourished over 1,000 years ago from 200 BCE to about 900 CE. Anuradhapura in Sri Lanka, the largest brick structures in the world at that time, while Gilvahara and Polonnaruwa exhibited the best examples of ancient Sinhalese sculpture. And here on the left-hand side, Baduru, Wagala in Sri Lanka. These are Mahayana Buddhist sculptures. And on the right-hand side, a lotus pond also at Polonnaruwa. And here we had a wonderful fieldwork trip together with Professor Lancaster and Lois's wife and the Sri Lankan team. monsoonal Ayutthaya in Thailand, and right through Thailand. And finally, this monumental fieldwork trip was brought to a fast close by COVID, while the museum project at Fogwan Shan was just beginning. Photogrammetry has become a vital source of data capture, and we completed a large-scale temporal browser of iconographic change. Here, Jayavarman VII from Angkor in Cambodia at the National Museum in Phnom Penh. This bodhisattva in the form of Avalokiteshvara, a national treasure from the National Museum in Sri Lanka in Colombo. And many of these Buddhas and Bodhisattva sculptures have never been seen outside their country of origin before. And alongside the fieldwork recordings, we undertook ethnographic musicology to sonify many of these sculptures. Here, which you can just hear, is a Khmer liturgy, a Dharma song from the 19th century. And finally, all these raw materials were brought together at Fogwan Shan with the great vision and support of the museum and Venerable Ru Chang for her wonderful effort and steely nerves, we could say. So I won't dwell too much here on the exhibition. You will visit later today. But just to say that the whole project encapsulates the core narrative of Professor Lancaster, from the iconographic to the architectural, the textual, the objects, and the monks themselves. And key features include the new media 12-meter diameter projection panorama. A 360-degree interactive allows you to encounter 70 of the thousands of sites rendered as a movie. It's a 14,000 pixel wide movie, and visitors take a journey over the oceans to the 7 countries and 70 of these sites. Here we're traveling to India, and we encountered the site at Sanchi. The linear navigator has a 2-screen construction, and it's suited to the panoramic format of these images, a spatial navigator, if you like. The so-called eye-domes, 4 meters diameter, rotating hemispherical images and movies, one depicting the extraordinary rock-cut caves of India and the other contemporary scenes, including ceremonies at Fogwan Shan. This one is in China at Tiaotong Temple in Ningbo. And animated photogrammetric sculptures had their own dedicated spaces in which the viewers can circumambulate. And this tension here between the real and the virtual, which is so powerful, is staged with objects from the Fogwan Shan Buddha Museum collections. And just to say that there are many more modalities of encountering this material. Here, a small gallery-based installation where visitors use a QR code, much as they do in the Children's Museum here, and you get inside the panorama. You can also run it on your phone, so inside the gigapixel image. And here, a work called Double Truth, where participants rotate a human-scale viewing platform in circumambulation, generating a dynamic temporal sequence that reveals 15 of these sacred sculptures, one by one. And our deepest appreciation to Venerable Ru Chang, Venerable Miao Fan, Venerable Miao Guang, and to all the Buddha Museum team and the Institute of Humanistic Buddhism, and of course to Professor Lancaster and his wonderful team and family to enable this miraculous project and this moment today to take place. Thank you.
Okay, thank you once again to Professor Dr. Sarah Candidine for giving us the privilege to get a glimpse into the endless possibilities for us to connect with the timeless Buddhist artifacts. It's truly amazing. And I believe after your virtual tour of the exhibition, at least for me, I have begun to look at this exhibition in a different light again. So thank you so much. And just a reminder, this afternoon at 1:30, Professor Lancaster will be personally giving a tour of the exhibition in real. And so please don't miss out on your opportunity to follow our Professor Lancaster. So last but not least, our panelist today is our academic curator, who yesterday asked me a question. I have said everything in my keynote. Should I still be on the panel? And so I said, how about if we ask questions for you to answer? I think that may be easier and simpler. And so for the remaining 20 minutes, I have a few questions to extend from Professor Lancaster's keynote speech regarding this amazing project. And so to begin, Professor Lancaster, in your keynote speech, you have described your experiences in South India that actually helped you decide to follow up on the Atlas of Maritime Buddhism. And so can you share with us what led you to try to make this atlas available in virtual reality?
Well, I want first to thank Venerable Shan and Venerable Miao for allowing me to once again speak to you. I feel that I've pretty much said what I can say, and I'm so happy to be on the same platform with my two great friends here. Professor Shaw and Professor Candidine are, I think, two of the most creative individuals on this planet. I think you've seen that in what they have presented to us. I'm so fortunate to have your friendship and your support, and I can never thank you enough. Your question about what led me to think that this could be in a virtual reality environment is my discussions with Sarah. I would say that you inspired me more than anybody to think that we could take a map, we could take information that we have put into geo-reference, latitude, longitude, and we make this map and we can travel through a cursor. But the question was, what if we took a map and made it 3D virtual reality and allowed you to travel that map with the ability to enter into any part of it and suddenly be immersed in what it's like at that point on the earth. It was such an appealing idea to me that from that moment on, I was caught up in the idea that let's do this. Let's figure out how to do this.
Thank you, Professor. So just to continue from your ending remark, how do we do this? Let's do this. My next question for you is, we all understand, or at least learn from this conference, that writing the script from the exhibition is a major task, which according to Venerable Ru Chang, the Maritime Buddhist Silk Road has the best script she ever came across. So can you share with us the process of how you construct a script, especially how do you construct a good script?
I have to admit to you that I did not know at the time that I was writing a script. This idea that you need a script in order to do a museum exhibit, it was a totally new idea to me. I now understand exactly why it's so important. That unless you have a script to start with, how can you really make a really good museum exhibit? But at the time, I was trying to put down some of my ideas, because the very idea of trying to work with maritime Buddhism was so difficult because the lack of data. It's not as if somebody has already written most of this in the format of a narrative that you could use for a museum exhibit, or even to tell the story of that narrative. We in the scholarly world are specialists, and we each have our specialization, and we tend to stay within the safety of our specialization. It's very scary for us as scholars to move outside of our specialization and move over into somebody else's area of specialization, because they know so much more than we know that they can destroy us because we'll make some terrible little error. But nevertheless, I decided to try to do it like a merchant traveling. The idea is, how did merchants travel? No merchant made, or very few merchants made the whole trip from India to China. Very, very rare. The few people who actually made the whole trip are still known to us in history because it was so rare and they were so well known. Merchants often just traveled one day. They would travel one day and do their business, where they would meet merchants who were traveling from the other direction, and then they would turn around and go home, because they had to stay within an area where people understood their language, where they could deal with the issues of life itself. On land, it was easy to maintain this kind of circuits of trade. It was very easy. You just knew that you went to the next oasis, you did your trading, and you came back home. But when I started to travel with the merchants on the sea, you get on board a ship, you travel for days and weeks, and suddenly you find yourself 1,000 miles from home in a totally different environment where nobody knows you, nobody speaks your language. I tried to imagine what it was like for merchants who did this, and the dangers in which they faced when they were traveling on those ships. You realize that the merchants didn't own the ships. They were owned by another corporation, if you will, mainly Arabs, who owned these ships. And the merchants who went on board these ships, they had no protection. They finally had to take their protection with them. They had to have bodyguards. And there was a whole division of people who learned how to be the bodyguards to travel with the merchants. And we read that in the Buddhist monks. They would often say, a storm arose and all the sailors, that is the Arab sailors on board the ship, decided that we were bad luck and they wanted to throw us overboard. Who kept them from throwing them overboard? It was their guards. I'm convinced of it, that many times it was their armed guards who protected them and kept them. So when I tried to take this trip with the merchants, I realized that this is probably one of the ways in which Buddhism spread. A merchant would travel hundreds of miles, thousands even, to another place, and his circuit was that big journey. And he could only journey in one direction with the monsoon winds. And they had to wait for the next year for the monsoon wind to blow him back. So he had to stay at that place, thousands of miles away, for months. Well, I think it's human nature probably. They all established 2 families. I think they all had 2 families. And when they went to the new place, they didn't take their wives and children from the old place. They found a local wife. And their children and their wife in the new place belonged and already understood and could speak the language. And these merchants who were Buddhists or who carried with them monks who came to their second home, out of these groups, I think, the new Buddhist communities began to develop. So I was trying to write this on the point of view of being a merchant and understanding the circuits that a merchant had. Long circuits, small circuits. But when a circuit overlaps with another one, it allows you to have an idea to travel through these circuits without an individual necessarily traveling through the whole of the circuit, because they carry the idea to point B, another group is picked up at point B and carries things to point C. So I had to understand that I didn't have to think of taking a merchant from India to China. I needed to see them in these circuits. And so that's how I came to try to write the book, was with this thought in mind of how it actually could have been possible. And in the process, of course, I believe that this allowed me to begin to use data, sparse as it was, but I hope to use it in an effective and actually realistic fashion.
Thank you very much, Professor, for enlightening us on the daunting task of data collection through following a merchant's footsteps and journey in order to create a good script. Well, given the time strain, I have to really pick up from 3 of the remaining questions and shrink it to 1.
Sure.
I have to apologize. So the final question that I must ask is that based on what we have heard today, we already understand that there's hope that all of you on the panel will work to have a second phase of the data collection. So the question is, will you plan to create the script for this next development? And can you tell us a bit more about the next phase?
Well, COVID came along. We used up all our money. And what you see is what we could produce from India basically to Cambodia. That's as far as we got on our first journey. But of course, the journey continued on into, and particularly to Guangzhou and southern China, and from there to Korea, and from there to Japan. And this story also needs to be told. It really always surprises me that Koreans are not too interested in this. They want things that came by land. They want things that came from China through the Goguryeo kingdom down through the land base. And when I say to them, you know, you're a peninsula, you're surrounded by the ocean on 3 sides of your nation. You are constantly been bombarded by the maritime world. So I'm hoping that my next task is to write the script for Korea. And Here in the room with us is Professor Zhang Wu. Please stand up, Zhang, so they can see you. Zhang Wu from the University of Arizona is going to write the script for the rest of China. So that we're first going to work on the Chinese script and the Korean script as we go forward with developing what the next phase of this work that we're going to turn to Sarah and to Jeffrey again and say, here's our script, here's our needs, here's where we need films, here's where we need to design in the creative way to present this to the public.
Thank you so much, Professor Lancaster. Well, I believe in the past hour and a bit, we have the privilege of listening and hearing from 4 of the greatest visionaries on earth who have forever changed our way of experiencing the beauty of the Buddhist world. And so it's been a true pleasure. And we also look forward to the next phase of Buddhist Maritime Silk Road. But I must say, in the meantime, if you have not seen the exhibition, this will be your first thing once our conference adjourns today. 我想今天我们在这个短短的1个多小时之内，我们很荣幸能够见证到，在世界上，我们说在地球上呢，4位最有创意、最有美感。最有这个深度、最有这个宗教理念的这个理念家，让我们看见佛教海线丝绸之路的美，它的宽度，还有它的广度。那我们非常期待可以看见这个展览的第2期的发展。那当然，如果现场的各位呢还没有机会走进这个现场的展览，那希望今天在学术会议结束之后呢，好，这个可以成为您的第一件事，好，赶快去看，好好的看，跟着我们一起在这个展览的路上一起成长。那今天我们最后呢，再一次以热烈的掌声感谢4位语坛人。Thank you once again for our panelists, and we look forward to your future inspirations for the world. Thank you so much.
非常感谢我们主持人以及4位策展人精彩的分享。
Thank you very much, Guang, the moderator, as well as the 4 curators.
我们稍作休息后，10点30分将进行第4场主题演讲，继续带领大家深入佛教海线丝绸之路。
This concludes panel 3. Panel 4 will begin at 10:30 after a short break.
提醒与会的贵宾，我们再提早回到现场，感谢大家。